Welcome back to the Injury Prone Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Edwin Porras, Dr. Physical Therapy Medical Analyst at fantasypoints.com. Gracias por tus oídos. If you are listening to this, you are probably a fan of betting, the higher, the lower, the point spread, whatever it is you like. Make sure you go to Underdog Fantasy, use promo code Injury Prone. They will match any deposit up to $1,000. Number two, go down to the show notes. Click on the Injury Prone Draft Guide and Season Long Playbook. You're going to get the draft guide as a courtesy at this point. You're also going to get the season-long playbook. You want to know how a guy is going to perform after high ankle? You would have looked at that maybe with the Devon Achane situation. You would have known, hey, I'm going to smash start Devon Achane. That is exactly what the season-long playbook is for every position. Never be confused about what to do after injuries again in your fantasy football leagues. So we'll dive right in. Obviously, don't want to bury the lead. The biggest question is going to be, should Tua be done? Should Tua do this? Should Tua do that? And obviously, Tua Tagovailoa suffering the concussion in the Thursday night game. This would be his fourth documented concussion, basically since college. And the only other precedent, believe it or not, there is a precedent, a player who has suffered a similar amount of concussions or similar situation, and the most similar that is Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks had concussions 17, 18, 19. And I said the same thing about him at the time. I said he probably should hang it up. He probably should just be done. His career might not last longer. Here he is, 2024. Brandon Cooks is still moving along. Now it becomes a lot more difficult for a guy like Tua Tagovailoa playing the quarterback position, obviously the most scrutinized, monitored position in the NFL. I think Tua should, number one, get through this acute injury. He should rehab it, see how he feels, see how his brain feels, see how he recovers over the next 2-3 weeks, take the time off that he needs, progress through a rehab protocol as any other player in the protocol should. And then we can we can start asking questions like, well, do you want to come back? Do you want to risk this? Do you want to risk that? He made it through last year just fine. Obviously took a heavy hit on Thursday, so I don't want to rule out that Tua will stay, will continue to play. I do think that, we did this last time where we said Tua should retire, and I said at the time, it's a sticky situation. There's no right or wrong answer, truthfully, because if the player decides this is something he wants to continue doing, then he's going to continue doing it. I think we just need to pump the brakes, take it a day at a time. These injuries are super sensitive. Stop giving it so much light. Unfortunately, that's sort of what I'm doing, but I just want to get ahead of it and say, let's let him get through this concussion and then let him get healthy and then go from there. No really discussion further than that is warranted. What I will say is moving on to a guy, Christian McCaffrey, where plenty of discussion is warranted. I will take the L on Christian McCaffrey. This is, I'll take a partial L. I'll say this. There are always instances, there are always situations, injury situations that are going to go south. There always is that 1 to 5% chance that something ends as poorly as it has for Christian McCaffrey to this point. I'll tell you, this is not the norm. I've given all the data on Christian McCaffrey. 2 of 25 NFL running backs have even had a calf injury since 2018. Only not 2 of 25, but 25 total running backs, NFL running backs. Only 2 of 25 have had a recurrence with a calf injury. Only one NFL running back since 2018 has been on the injury report with an Achilles or calf issue, has actually ruptured their Achilles. That's Marlon Mack. You look at all NFL injuries, you see that 90 to 93% of them, they end up returning in 31 days. I mean, every statistic, every data point out there, Christian McCaffrey has essentially fallen outside of that, outside of the bell curve, outside of the average. So this is not a normal situation. So if you went out and you bought Christian McCaffrey, if you drafted him, if you listen to my analysis, understand that I did not expect him to be the outlier of all outliers, although maybe we should have, because he is an outlier player in general. So what we can probably expect from McCaffrey is that he likely won't take longer than this 4 weeks. I think 5 weeks maximum. They'll bring him back. They'll ramp him up. On a per touch basis, on a per game basis, you're probably not going to see much of a dip for Christian McCaffrey. You really won't. It's just a matter of how many games he's going to come back from. So I apologize. I'll take the partial L, but understand that even if you were targeting him before, you didn't make the wrong decision. Statistically speaking, that was the most probable outcome was that he would come back, be fine, and smash. Right? Obviously, that didn't happen. Just stop taking victory laps. That's weird. Every player in the NFL gets injured. I think anybody taking a victory lap about calling this in July, June, whatever, August. You didn't have any credible data to actually back your thought process. And there was no reason other than, oh, well, I sort of feel this way or I'm thinking this to have faded Christian McCaffrey. Moving forward, it's going to be up to you. I would trade something like a Puka Nacua in exchange for a Christian McCaffrey because I think a lot of fantasy managers will view them as very similar assets simply because at this point they're going to miss roughly the same amount of time. I'll tell you they're both high risk. I'll tell you they both can continue to miss games even after being on the IR. But if you were to compare 1-to-1, apples and oranges, and you have Christian McCaffrey and you have Puka Nacua, really, if you just want to swap one set of problems for the other, I would swap for the guy who has the higher ceiling, which of course is Christian McCaffrey. So that's one way to do it. But if you also trade Christian McCaffrey away for somebody else, for a handful of guys that might be able to make up the points, what you want points now, then I wouldn't fault you for that either. I've led you astray enough on this situation. I've given you enough data points that obviously the situation has fallen apart beyond what statistically we're able to assess. I'm going to tell you to go on feel. I'm going to tell you to go based on feel on here. But if you go out and get Christian McCaffrey, obviously, I'm not going to argue that because I'm going to try to do it myself. So the other guy here that we should talk about that's already been injured, of course, is Odunze, and by default, also Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's been dealing with this heel issue, and what I think is going on with Keenan Allen is he's got some sort of plantar fasciitis. He looked pretty bad out there last week. You notice that he's running and limping, and it's just not a good issue. He hasn't practiced all week. He's a guy who doesn't have to practice in order to play. He's a vet. He's been in the game for a long time. He doesn't necessarily need to practice, but based on how he looked last week and sort of what we expect from him, I don't necessarily think that he is going to be out there. The flip side of Odunze, he injured his right knee, MCL sprain. Those are typically 0 to 1 week injuries. The primary thing is going to be pain control. He's probably going to be limited, maybe ding him 10 to 15% of what you'd expect from a production perspective. But especially if Keenan Allen is out, obviously that route tree, that target competition becomes a little more difficult or a little easier. And so maybe he could be boosted up a little bit here by volume. If you were starting Odunze at a flex wide receiver 3 spot, I'm probably still trotting him out there, especially in PPR. The next guy, Jayden Reed. Well, you know what? Let's talk A.J. Brown here because they're in similar positions but a little different. So A.J. Brown popped up on the Friday injury report with a hamstring strain. What I can tell you is that since 2018, you've seen 40 instances of this, 40 instances of a player randomly popping up on a Friday and then still going on to play either on Sunday or Monday. Now, this was unexpected when I was looking at the data, but 75% of those dudes actually end up not playing. Only 25% have actually played. Now, if you look at the data further and you discuss how many points they scored when they were active, right, it's actually pretty good. The median here in points scored is actually 10 or 11. If I'm doing the math off the top of the head, I'm looking at it here. But most of the guys actually perform pretty well. And I tweeted this out. If you want to go at FP Injured Ducks to read it yourself. But here are the guys who, of the 10 players here, AJ that I ended up playing, even though they were on the injury report with the hamstring strain, wide receivers. Of those 10 players, here are AJ Brown's best comparisons. 2020 Julio Brown, 25 points. 2021 Mike Evans, 15 points. Cortland Sutton, 2019, 8 points. Terry McLaurin, 2021, 7 points. Those are probably his best comps of all those guys that have been on the injury report since 2018 who are going through this situation. So what that tells me is that either this is nothing and the guys blow up and they do fine, or this is a legit issue and he's not going to play at all. Obviously, it's really hard to know what the Eagles are going to do. You have a Monday night game. The latest I would let this go is through the noon window, unless you can get some kind of confirmation from like a reporter or something. But you can try to hold out as long as you can. See if those sweet Schefter tweets at Saturday night will tell us or give us any idea of what's going to go on. Bottom line is if we learn that AJ Brown is going to be active Monday night, or if we get any sort of Schefter report from that or rap sheet report from that, put him in your lineup like usual. Let him sit there. And if not, this is going to make Devontae Smith obviously a smash. It's even going to bump Dallas Goedert up a little bit. So if you have the option, you can also start those guys. Other than that, your options get pretty bad after that first noon window closes. So you're really going to start to limit yourself. So if you want to just risk it for the biscuit and say, I'm going to bet that AJ Brown's fine, I'm going to leave him in my lineup and I'm not going to do anything else, then go for it. That's certainly going to be the boom bust move here. Jayden Reed, the next guy. Similar situation, but he's on there for a calf/shin issue. That's a little confusing considering the calf and the shin are on opposite, anterior, posterior, front, and back of the body. But hey, whatever. We'll let the Packers do what they're going to do. Same situation here with Reed. He may go, he may not. Who knows what the Packers are going to end up doing anyway with any of their injured players? Because really, if they're just putting everybody on ice, they can sort of hit the reset button, put everybody on ice until Jordan Love gets back in the next 2-3 weeks. They might just end up sitting Jayden Reed, so that's something that you need to be aware of. But even then, I don't know how excited you are to play Jayden Reed, considering that they're going to have Malik Willis under center. So you could probably find better options anyway in most leagues when it comes to Jayden Reed. Anyway, that's all I have for you, unless Jorge's going to put in the chat a guy that I forgot. Those are really the main players. If you want more, go to fantasypoints.com, go to the injury report. You can read all my comprehensive reports on guys like Ken Walker, more on of course, on Jordan Love, guys like that, what to expect from Jordan Addison, yada, yada, yada. We've hit some, right? So far, we've hit some home runs. So far, we've struck out. But the point is to go down swinging. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at FBInjuryDoc. Gracias por tus oídos.